The year is 1942. The world is in turmoil, and the echoes of conflict reverberate across continents. Nations are embroiled in a struggle for survival, power, and dominance. The world is engulfed in the flames of the Second World War. Cities lie in ruins, and the cries of the innocent fill the air. The devastation is widespread, affecting millions of lives. Nazi Germany, under the iron fist of Adolf Hitler, had conquered much of Europe. His vision of a thousand-year Reich seemed within reach as his forces swept across the continent with ruthless efficiency. The Wehrmacht, seemingly unstoppable, had its sights set on the oil-rich Caucasus region of the Soviet Union. Their tanks rolled forward, crushing all resistance in their path, driven by a relentless ambition. This ambitious campaign led them to the strategically vital city that bore the name of their enemy's leader, Stalingrad. The city stood as a symbol of Soviet resilience and defiance. The world watched with bated breath. Civilians, soldiers, and leaders alike were glued to their radios and newsreels, anxiously awaiting updates from the front lines. The fate of the Eastern Front, and perhaps the entire war, hung in the balance. Military strategists on both sides knew that the outcome of this battle could change the course of history. Would Hitler's gamble pay off, or would the Red Army find a way to halt the Nazi war machine? The Red Army, fueled by a fierce determination to defend their homeland, prepared for a grueling fight. The answer, as we know, would be forged in the crucible of one of the most brutal battles in human history. The Battle of Stalingrad would become a turning point, as the Russians stopped the relentless advance of German forces. As we dive deeper into this historic battle, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. To understand the Battle of Stalingrad, one must first understand the importance of the Volga River. This river, often referred to as the lifeblood of Russia, has played a pivotal role in the country's history, culture, and economy for centuries. Flowing south through the heart of Russia, the Volga was a vital artery for the Soviet Union. It stretches over 3,500 kilometers, making it the longest river in Europe. Its vast network of tributaries and canals connected remote regions, facilitating trade and communication. It was a crucial transport route for oil, grain, and other vital resources from the Caucasus and Caspian Sea regions to the industrial centers in the north. The river's significance was not just economic, but also strategic, as it enabled the movement of military supplies and personnel. Control of the Volga meant control of the flow of supplies that kept the Soviet war effort afloat. During World War II, the river became a lifeline for the Soviet Union, ensuring the delivery of essential resources to the front lines and industrial hubs. For Hitler, capturing Stalingrad would not only sever this vital lifeline, but also deliver a crushing blow to Soviet morale. The city, named after the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, held immense symbolic value. Its capture would signify a major propaganda victory for the Nazis. It would be a symbolic victory, taking the city named after his nemesis, Joseph Stalin. The battle for Stalingrad thus became a turning point in the war, with the Volga River at its heart, symbolizing both the resilience and the strategic importance of the Soviet Union. Stalingrad, formerly known as Tsaritsyn, was a sprawling industrial city on the western bank of the Volga River. Factories churned out tanks, guns, and ammunition, fueling the Soviet war effort. But more than just its industrial output, Stalingrad held immense symbolic value. It was, after all, named after the very man who ruled the Soviet Union with an iron fist. The city's workers, many of whom were women and children, toiled tirelessly in support of the Red Army. They built tank traps, manned anti-aircraft guns, and prepared for the inevitable onslaught. The people of Stalingrad, like their leader, were determined to resist the Nazi invaders at any cost. The Battle of Stalingrad was more than just a clash of armies, it was a clash of ideologies. On one side stood the Nazi war machine, fueled by racial hatred and the delusional dream of a thousand-year Reich. On the other, the Red Army, bolstered by the unwavering resolve of a people defending their homeland from tyranny. The stakes could not have been higher. The outcome of this battle would have profound implications not just for the Soviet Union and Germany, but for the entire world. It would determine the fate of millions and shape the course of the 20th century. The Luftwaffe unleashed. The battle began in earnest in August 1942 with a thunderous aerial bombardment by the Luftwaffe, Germany's air force. Wave after wave of German bombers pounded Stalingrad, reducing much of the city to rubble. Buildings crumbled, factories burned, and the streets ran red with the blood of civilians and soldiers alike. The Luftwaffe's relentless assault turned the city into a living hell, and the air grew thick with smoke and the stench of death. As the Luftwaffe rained incendiaries from above, a German spearhead of ground troops pushed into the city's northern suburbs. The Soviet 62nd Army, under the command of General Vasily I Chuikov, was pushed back into Stalingrad proper, where it made a determined stand. Stalingrad quickly became the scene of some of the most intense, brutal, and concentrated fighting of the war. Soviet defenders, outgunned and outnumbered, clung tenaciously to every inch of their ravaged city. From streets to rubble, as German forces pushed deeper into Stalingrad, the battle descended into a brutal close-quarters fight. Streets and buildings became battlegrounds. Snipers hid in the rubble, picking off soldiers from both sides. Tanks dueled amidst the ruins, their shells reducing what little remained of the city to dust. Every inch of ground was fiercely contested. Casualties mounted at an appalling rate, yet neither side was willing to yield. The Germans, confident in their eventual victory, were drawn deeper into the urban labyrinth. The Soviets, fueled by patriotism and desperation, fought with the ferocity of cornered animals. Red October Factory. One of the most iconic locations of the battle was the Red October Steel Factory. This sprawling industrial complex, once a symbol of Soviet progress, became a fortress for the city's defenders. Within its shattered walls, a desperate struggle for survival raged. Soviet soldiers, many of them barely men, held their ground against relentless German attacks. They fought from building to building, room to room, often engaging in hand-to-hand combat. The factory floor, littered with twisted metal and shell casings, became a testament to the human cost of the battle. The tide turns at Mamayev Kurgan. The battle raged on for months, a brutal back-and-forth struggle for survival. After a major Russian counter-offensive caught the Germans by surprise, the tide of the battle began to turn in favor of the Russians. The German advance, hampered by logistical problems and stiffening Soviet resistance, began to falter. This was particularly evident on the strategically vital hill of Mamayev Kurgan. Mamayev Kurgan, overlooking the city, was the scene of some of the fiercest fighting of the entire battle. Whichever force controlled the hill could rain fire directly into the city's center and inflict heavy casualties. Control of the hill changed hands multiple times. Despite aggressive pushes from German troops, the Russian defenders managed to wrestle away control of the hill and held the strategic high ground until relieved, dealing a significant blow to German morale. Operation Uranus breaking the siege. With the German advance stalled, the Soviets launched a daring major counteroffensive in November 1942, codenamed Operation Uranus. Exploiting the overstretched German flanks, Soviet forces, attacking in two spearheads, hit the weakened German flanks. The maneuver caught the Germans completely by surprise, as they did not believe the Soviets capable of mounting such an attack. Soviet forces quickly devastated the German flanks and encircled the German Sixth Army, trapping them within the ruins of Stalingrad. The German Sixth Army, once the pride of the Wehrmacht, was now hopelessly surrounded. Attempts to break the encirclement failed. Supplies dwindled, ammunition ran low, and the bitter Russian winter set in. The once invincible German war machine had been caught in a Soviet vice. Legacy of a ruined city? In February 1943, after months of unimaginable suffering, the remnants of the German Sixth Army surrendered. The once mighty force, which had stormed across Europe with an air of invincibility, was now reduced to a shadow of its former self. Starvation, cold, and relentless Soviet attacks had taken their toll. The Battle of Stalingrad, one of the longest and bloodiest battles in history, was finally over. The city, once a thriving industrial hub, lay in ruins. The streets were filled with the debris of war, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and death. The cost in human lives was staggering, with estimates of over 2 million combined casualties. The Soviet Union had achieved a victory of almost mythical proportions, but at a staggering cost. The city was devastated. and the human suffering was immense. Families were torn apart and the landscape was forever changed. Yet, amidst the ruins, there was a sense of triumph and resilience. The Battle of Stalingrad marked a major turning point in World War II. It was a moment when the tide of war began to turn in favor of the Allies. The strategic importance of this victory cannot be overstated. It halted the German advance into the Soviet Union and began a series of offensives that would eventually lead to the fall of Berlin. The myth of German invincibility was shattered. The Wehrmacht, which had seemed unstoppable, was now in retreat. The psychological impact of this defeat was profound, both for the German soldiers and the German people. It was a blow from which they would never fully recover. The Wehrmacht, bled white in the ruins of Stalingrad, was never quite the same. The loss of experienced soldiers and the depletion of resources left the German military weakened. The morale of the troops was severely damaged, and the once confident army was now filled with doubt and fear. The Red Army, bloodied but unbowed, and the many citizen defenders fighting alongside them had proven their resilience to the world. The soldiers and civilians who fought in Stalingrad became symbols of Soviet strength and determination. Their victory was a testament to their courage and tenacity, and it inspired hope and pride throughout the Soviet Union. The road to Berlin, though long and arduous, had been opened. The victory at Stalingrad set the stage for a series of Soviet offensives that would push the German forces back, inch by inch, until they reached the heart of the Third Reich. The legacy of Stalingrad was not just a ruined city, but a turning point in the history of the world. I hope you enjoyed this video and will take the time to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's totally free, ensures you never miss an episode, and helps out this growing channel. We are the Minutemen of History.